Mother, please save me. Mother, you're my mother. How can you just watch all this happen? I clung to her shawl, crying uncontrollably while she turned away, tears streaming down her cheeks, utterly helpless. I sprang up and dropped to her feet. Mother, listen to me. Even if father is gone, does that give grandfather the right to treat us like this? Why don't you speak to him? Let's go live with Nani and Nana. Grandfather is so cruel to me. You know exactly how he behaves. You saw it with your own eyes. So why don't you raise your voice? I shook her desperately, but she simply cried on in silence, wiping her tears again and again with the edge of her dupatta. Perhaps all she could do was lock herself in her room and weep. In our family, a widow isn't even allowed to step outside without necessity. At home, they treated her as if she'd caused father's death. Everyone spat insults at her, gave her hateful looks. Widowhood had become her crime, and her punishment was to be imprisoned behind those four walls. When I clung to her one time too many, she yanked me away and said sharply, "Be quiet, Zainab. There's nothing I can do. The elders of this house, your grandfather, make all the decisions here. Even if I wanted to protect you, I can't. Your birth is what stripped me of my standing in this family. I was the eldest daughter-in-law, and yet they trampled me underfoot. Your Chachi, with her two sons, became mistress of this mansion, and I was reduced to worse than a servant. If only I'd had a son instead of you, then I would hold a special place here. Even after your father's passing, I would have an heir to this house, and my life would be entirely different. I wouldn't be lying here like discarded trash. Since your birth, not only did your father turn against me, but the entire family has treated me as their slave. And now look what your grandfather is doing. I know it all, yet I am powerless. Whatever he wills will happen in this mansion. Now go to your room and leave me in peace. My breath can barely reach me in this house." With that, she seized my hand, shoved me into the corridor, locked the door behind me, and I felt as though my world had ended. My mother knew all the cruelty I endured but couldn't help me. The very woman who had given me life was powerless. Who then could save me from grandfather's tyranny? Tears streaming, I began to knock on her locked door, but she didn't open it. Instead, Chachi appeared. Seeing me there, she hissed, "What are you doing out here? Go back to your room. You have no permission to be roaming around." The contempt in her eyes was unmistakable. She'd always wanted me out of the way. She had her two sons and claimed every corner of this mansion for them. My mother and I were simply burdens here, and grandfather was determined to use me for his own ends. That fear haunted me day and night. As I wept my way back to my room, Kairamai's voice called out, "Bibi, grandfather is asking for you." At her words, the ground seemed to vanish beneath my feet. I never wanted to go into grandfather's room. I knew exactly why he'd summoned me. I said nothing to Kairamai, but the moment she left, I bolted the door and, terrified, curled up on the bed. No one was coming to save me. I closed my eyes and thought of my father. Even though he had found my existence burdensome, at least nobody dared look at me askance when he was alive. Now, even my own grandfather was set on tormenting me. I was trembling so badly I could barely breathe, and I resolved not to open the door. But moments later, someone knocked again, and then I heard the lock click. My heart sank when I saw Chachi step inside. She seized my arm and hauled me to my feet. "Can't you hear him? Grandfather has been waiting for you a long time." Before I could protest, she was dragging me down the corridor. I sobbed, "Chachi, please, I don't want to go. Grandfather will only hurt me. Let me stay here." But she ignored me, marched me into his room, and thrust me before him. There he sat in his crisp white cotton shalwar kameez, mustache bristling, his eyes narrowing as he studied me. He smoothed my cheek, lifted my chin, and a strange smile crept across his lips. "Go away, Chachi. We will speak to Zainab ourselves." Chachi tried to stay beside me. "I'll come with you, Chachi," I begged, clutching her hand. Red-faced, she yanked free and stormed out. Grandfather gripped my arm and sat me down on his bed. His eyes burned as he closed the door behind us. My hands and feet turned ice cold. "You have no manners, girl," he thundered. "Do you know who we are? We are the landowners, the village chiefs. No one dares raise their head before us, and yet you look me in the eye and speak back. How dare you refuse our summons?" His voice had gone dangerously calm, yet every word dripped with menace. He grabbed a fistful of my hair and squeezed. Making your mother the daughter-in-law of this house was a mistake, he spat. You mustn't be given a free rein. It's best we clip your wings now. With a shove that sent me sprawling onto the bed, he left me there trembling, my dupatta slipping off my shoulder as tears poured down my face. Please, don't be cruel, grandfather, I wailed. It's not my fault. I'm only 10 years old. I want to study, to become a doctor. Having learned his intentions, I felt my life drain away. In this mansion, no woman dared object. Everyone was his slave, following his every command, especially Chachi. She longed to secure the inheritance for her own sons, so she never raised a voice against any cruelty. Even now, it was she who brought me to grandfather's room. Even though she knew why grandfather had summoned me, I was helplessly screaming and calling out to my mother, but it seemed as if the ears of everyone in the mansion had gone deaf. And then grandfather did such a cruel thing to me that my soul trembled. Grandfather showed no mercy. He didn't even consider that I was only 10 years old. He didn't even think that I was the only daughter of his deceased son. He simply crossed every boundary of savagery with a 10-year-old girl like me. My name is Zainab. When I became conscious of the world, I found myself imprisoned within the walls of the mansion. And slowly, I came to understand how being born a daughter in this household was considered a huge crime. Gradually, I started noticing that my father didn't even like to speak to my mother. If my mother held me close, my father would look at her with hatred in his eyes. When he came to the mansion, it seemed like he wanted to throw me far away. When I was 6 or 7 years old, I started understanding the conversations between my mother and father. My father always said to my mother, "You gave me a daughter and no other children. Because of you, I've lost my status in this mansion in the village. People look at me strangely. Basa, look at the great Sayan, couldn't even father a son." Meanwhile, Shahbaz already has 2 sons. His name is praised in the village. If he says even one word in front of Baba Jan, he listens immediately. But my every word is rejected. Father always said such things to mother. After he left, mother would cry in secret for hours. If I approached her, she would push me away in anger. So slowly, I understood that when father was home, or had just left, I should not go near mother because her mood would be ruined and she would pour all her anger onto me. When I turned 9, I began to understand even more. I fully grasped the meaning behind father's words. Because I was born a girl, grandfather had stopped valuing my father. All the affairs of the mansion had been handed over to uncle and aunt, and father had lost all importance. In fact, he was now under uncle's authority, even though uncle was the younger brother. The biggest reason for this was that uncle had 2 heirs to the mansion, which made him walk with a puffed chest and proud shoulders. Father, on the other hand, had no child other than me, and then he started forcing mother to have more children. But that wasn't in her hands. Whenever father came home, he would abuse and mistreat her, always demanding more children. But mother never conceived again. That's why father was becoming more and more angry and bitter. He couldn't even remarry because mother was the daughter of a landlord from the neighboring village. If father remarried, the land ownership arrangement would be ruined. And then, during one of those fights, father's car met with an accident. It plunged into the canal near the village. Despite much searching, his body was never recovered. But the lives of my mother and me became living corpses. We could no longer breathe freely or make our own choices. We had no rights in that mansion. Mother became a prisoner within the 4 walls of her room, and I became aunt's servant. Without her permission, I wasn't even allowed to step outside my own room. After father's death, mother started blaming me for everything. Maybe she was enduring a great trauma, which is why she always remained bitter towards me. And then something happened that I had never even imagined. There was some old enmity with another village. Nobody knew exactly what the matter was, but during this tension, an accidental shot was fired by uncle, and that bullet hit the landlord's son from the other village. The matter was then taken to court, and it was agreed that in exchange for uncle's act of killing, a woman from our household would have to be handed over to the landlord of the other village. And then grandfather decided that he would marry me off, me, a 10-year-old girl, to the landlord's elder son. As soon as I heard this, I caused a huge uproar, and because of that, the entire mansion was thrown into a strange chaos. Mother was devastated, crying her heart out, but she couldn't do anything for me. As for aunt, she had always wanted me gone from the mansion in any way possible, and now with her husband's life at stake, she herself threw me into grandfather's room. Grandfather shoved me onto his bed and strictly explained that I would quietly get married and leave this house, or else he would take my life with his own hands. I sat at grandfather's feet. I pleaded with him not to do this injustice to me. I was just a 10-year-old girl with big dreams. For me, marriage was nothing but torment, because I had always seen my parents fighting and arguing. I had never seen my mother happy, and that's why I was very afraid of the word marriage. I didn't know what happened after marriage, but I knew very well how a man could oppress a woman. I begged grandfather with folded hands, but to save his son, grandfather conducted my marriage with Zafar Khan during the village council. Zafar Khan, the elder son of the landlord from the other village. He was a 20-year-old man, tall, broad, and handsome, and I, a 10-year-old innocent child. I was sent off from the council itself and taken straight to the mansion in the other village without even getting to meet my mother. I was in terrible fear, trembling violently. I had no idea what was going to happen to me next. Zafar Khan's mother looked at me with contempt and immediately gave the order that I be thrown into Zafar Khan's room. A maid grabbed me and threw me into Zafar Khan's bedroom, then closed the door and left. I was crying and looking around the room. It was a very large room with huge pictures of Zafar Khan on the walls. I felt very scared. Still crying, I lay down on the bed, and I don't even know when I fell asleep. When I woke up, I sensed someone's presence in the room. I got up and saw that Zafar Khan had entered. He took off the coat he was wearing over his shalwar kameez and tossed it aside. His deep brown eyes were fixed on me. I quickly sat up and shrank into myself. My hair, which reached my waist, was completely open. Some strands were on my face, others spilling over the side of the bed. He slowly stepped toward me. There was redness in his eyes, as if he had been crying for a long time. Sitting beside me, he examined me and then said, "You're not Shahbaz Khan's daughter, are you? Then who are you?" Out of fear, my voice was gone. I couldn't say anything. He then asked harshly again, "Who are you, Shahbaz Khan's?" "I'm his niece." Trembling with fear, I somehow managed to say this. His expression suddenly changed. "Oh, so you are the only daughter of his deceased brother?" He nodded his head as if something made sense to him. "Your father's not alive." "Then who offered you as a sacrifice in this revenge?" This time, he asked with much interest. "My grandfather. He is very cruel. He has always done injustice to me and my mother. And now he sacrificed me for this revenge. I want to study. I want to become a doctor. I wanted to give my mother a good life, but they sent me here." I started crying badly. He gave me a deep look and said, "Zainab, it's very late now. Get some rest. We'll talk in the morning." He let me sleep on the bed and went out of the room himself. I had no idea where he went, but I thanked God that he didn't do any injustice to me. I fell asleep remembering my mother. The next morning, a maid came and took me out of the room and brought me before Zafar Khan's mother. She was the elder woman of the mansion. She looked at me with anger and hatred and said, "From today you are a maid. Wear this anklet. Every maid in this mansion wears it. Understand your duty and try to come in front of me as little as possible. When I see your face, I'm reminded of my deceased son." While saying this, there was some moisture in her voice, and somehow I began to understand her pain. She looked just as helpless and worried as my own mother. I wore that silver anklet on my hands and feet, the same one that every maid in that house wore, and then I began working in the mansion. Within 2 days, I was fully engaged. My own aunt treated me this way. On the third day, at night, I finally saw Zafar Khan in the room. When I entered the room, he saw me and was startled for a moment because I was wearing torn old clothes and the silver anklet was shining on my hands and feet. With anger on his face, he immediately came close to me. "Who made you wear this anklet?" he asked furiously. "This? The elder madam made me wear it," I replied with lowered eyes. He quickly pulled it off from my hand and then cut it off my feet too. I started crying. Fear gripped me. How would I face the elder madam now? But he gently placed his hand on my head and said, "I've made arrangements for your education in the city. I'm taking you with me to the city. You'll study there, and then become a doctor. I will fulfill your every dream." Hearing Zafar Khan's words, I was left stunned. My uncle had killed his brother, yet how could he show such sympathy toward me? Even though I was just 10, in the environment we were raised in, we understood the customs of enmity very well. He understood from the look on my face what I was thinking. Smiling, he said, I know very well how much hatred your uncle holds for you and your mother. I grew up in the same system too, that's why I know how women are treated in our society. But I completed my education in the city, and I know how a woman should be respected. I married you for the sake of my parents, but I cannot ruin your life because of them. I will talk to my mother myself. You prepare to go to the city. And then, 2 days later, Zafar Khan took me with him to the city. I don't know how he convinced his mother, but once we reached the city, he enrolled me in a good school for education. He remained busy with his business, and I stayed focused on my studies. He kept his room and mine separate. Slowly, I began climbing the stairs of youth. When I turned 15, I began to realize what my relationship with him truly was. When I looked at Zafar Khan, my heart would beat in a different way. I wished to fulfill our relationship, to live a beautiful life with him. But maybe he didn't want to take advantage of my helplessness. He understood that I was still young and had dreams to fulfill. That's why Zafar Khan never forced anything on me. Instead, he helped me in my studies, took me to college, and cared for me. Eventually, I got admission into MBBS. Sometimes I missed my mother terribly. But then I would think, if my mother had ever raised her voice for herself or for my rights, maybe our lives would have turned out differently. Over time, my heart became deeply attached to Zafar Khan. I completed my MBBS and received my degree as a doctor. By then, I was 25 years old and Zafar Khan had turned 35. He had never once looked at another woman, nor had he ever left me alone for even a moment. The day I received my degree as a doctor, he was happier than even I was. On that day, for the first time, Zafar Khan sat beside me, held my hand, and said, I have waited eagerly for this day. I married you because of my parents, but I truly accepted this marriage with my heart. For you, I left everything behind and came to this city. And now that your degree is complete, I want to ask you, do you wish to continue this relationship with me, or is your path elsewhere? As always, I will respect whatever decision you make. He sat before me with his head bowed, and I felt immense love for this man. I had only seen the men of the village as cruel and tyrannical who treated women like shoes under their feet. But this was the first man who placed me above everything, who valued my dreams more than I did. I gently held Zafar Khan's hand and opened my heart to him. Hearing my words, a soft smile appeared on his face, and he embraced me in his arms. I had fallen deeply in love with Zafar. He was the kind of man who completely changed the way I thought. Years later, happiness finally entered our lives. I told Zafar that I now wanted to do something for the people of the village. Can you help build a hospital in the village for me? I asked, and Zafar held that wish as dearly as everything else. Not only did he build a hospital in the village, but he also brought my mother out of grandfather's mansion and into ours. Grandfather had done all the cruelty he could in his lifetime, and by then, he had passed away. Uncle and aunt, as expected, didn't want to keep my mother with them, so they handed her over to Zafar. Today, I, my mother, and Zafar all live together in one mansion. I have opened a large hospital where I not only treat the village's women, but also teach them to raise their voice for their rights. I want to make sure that no other girl named Zainab ever suffers the injustice that I did.